Imagine this. There's a small village in the mountains of southern China where the average person ages well into their 90s. These men and women still walk miles a day, still farm, still laugh with their grandchildren, and when doctors come to study them, they notice something fascinating. Every single morning, these villagers gather for the same 3 drinks. Not soda, not frappuccinos, but simple ancient drinks passed down for thousands of years. Today, I'm going to share with you 3 of the most powerful drinks in the world, drinks that modern science confirms can literally fight cancer cells, reduce chronic disease, and keep your body young. And I promise, the 3rd one is something you've probably never even heard of if you didn't grow up with Chinese medicine. So, let's dive in. Hey guys, it's Dr. Alex Heyne, board licensed doctor of acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine, and author of the health book Master the Day. Let's jump in. You know, one of the biggest questions people ask me is this: why does cancer even happen? You know, from the Western perspective, it's usually explained as DNA mutations, damaged cells multiplying, and the immune system failing to keep up. And that's true, but traditional Chinese medicine offers another lens, one that looks more at the terrain of the body instead of just the tumor itself. Imagine that your body is like a beautiful garden. In a healthy garden, the soil is rich, the water flows evenly, and the sun is balanced. Weeds may try to sprout, but they can't take over because the ecosystem is strong. But now imagine that the soil becomes damp, heavy, and clogged. The water stagnates. The sun burns too hot in some places, leaving other areas cold and shadowed. And over time, these weeds begin to thrive. They grow stronger because the terrain has become weak and unbalanced. In traditional Chinese medicine, cancer is like these invasive weeds. It doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It arises when the terrain, your qi, your blood, what we call your yin and yang, fall out of balance. Sometimes it's what we call qi stagnation. Years of unprocessed emotions, stress, and tension that literally knot up the body inside out. And other times, it's what we call phlegm and dampness. These are sort of the heavy, sticky byproducts of poor digestion, excess sugar and greasy foods. You know, substances that the body really couldn't transform and take care of and process, so they congeal into masses and growths or lymphatic stagnation. And often, underneath it all, there's a deficiency of what we call zheng qi, the righteous protective energy of the body. When your zheng qi is strong, disease can't take root. But when it's weak, the weeds have free reign. Now there's even an old phrase in Chinese: when the qi is upright, pathogenic qi cannot invade. Think about that. Cancer isn't just about like some rogue cells, it's about the state of your inner garden. If you strengthen the terrain, you nourish the soil, you balance the water and the sun, those weeds cannot thrive. Now, drink number 1 is green tea, or liu cha in Chinese. Green tea is the most obvious because people drink this casually today, but originally Buddhist monks and Taoist sages drank green tea as medicine. In fact, during long meditation retreats, monks would drink green tea not just for energy, but because it cleared their mind, reduced cravings, and kept the body light and alert. Now, what we know today is that green tea is loaded with a compound called EGCG. And EGCG is like a sniper bullet for cancer cells. In lab studies, it actually prevents tumors from creating new blood vessels. It helps the immune system recognize cancer cells, and it actually slows down their growth. Now, in traditional Chinese medicine, we say that green tea is what's called slightly bitter and cooling. Now, what that means is that it clears heat, it drains, quote, toxins, and helps dissolve phlegm. Now, in traditional Chinese medicine, phlegm doesn't just mean what you're coughing up. It's also the pathological junk that accumulates inside of your body. And over time, it's often linked to tumors and growths. You know, I'll never forget when I visited the Longjing tea fields outside of Hangzhou. The farmers there smiled and said to me, you know, this isn't tea, it's medicine. And they're right. Now, medicinal teas like green tea are one of the maybe 5 healing principles from traditional Chinese medicine that help when you're burned out and you're chronically exhausted and you want to live a long life. I see so many people that are burned out. They're wired, but they're tired. They're exhausted. They can't sleep and they're anxious. But yet, when they see their doctor and they run the labs, everything comes back normal. But here's the crazy part. In traditional Chinese medicine, we've been describing this exact pattern for over 2,000 years. And that's why I'm hosting a free live online event in just a few weeks here called The Lost Chinese Practices, quietly helping people conquer chronic fatigue and burnout. Now, if you're feeling this way, you do not want to miss this one-time live event. There's a link right below this video to register, and our spaces are limited. And of course, it's live. So come on over and join me and ask some questions. Now, number 2 is a medicinal mushroom, especially one called Reishi, known in Chinese as lingzhi, or mushroom of immortality, or spirit mushroom. Now here's the story. Over 2,000 years ago, emperors in China would actually send entire expeditions into the mountains just to find this mushroom, because it was believed to actually confer longevity, vitality, and protection from disease. Now, Lingzhi was actually so rare that only the emperor himself was allowed to consume it. Now, when you fast forward to today, modern science shows us why the mushroom was so revered. Reishi and other medicinal mushrooms like chaga and turkey tail are loaded with beta-glucans and triterpenes. These compounds activate your natural killer cells, the special immune cells that literally hunt down and destroy cancer cells. And in fact, in Japan and China, mushroom extracts are still prescribed in hospitals as official cancer therapy, not alternative medicine, mainstream medicine. Patients who combine chemotherapy with mushroom extracts have been shown to live longer and recover faster than those who don't. Now, in traditional Chinese medicine, Lingzhi nourishes what we call heart and lung qi, calms the spirit, and strengthens what's called your zheng qi, your body's protective resources and immune system. Now, the best way to actually consume reishi mushrooms is actually decoction, like the traditional way. You could simmer the slices for 30 to 60 minutes in boiling water. It's bitter and earthy, not at all like a Starbucks latte, but that bitterness is actually the medicine itself. Now, drink number 3 is huangqi, or Astragalus. It's not trendy, it's not on the grocery store shelf. It's one of the most important herbs in traditional Chinese medicine. There's an old saying in Chinese medicine that huangqi raises the qi of 100 diseases. Now, what does that mean? Astragalus strengthens your immune system at the deepest level. Modern studies show that Astragalus increases your white blood cell activity, protects your bone marrow during chemotherapy, and helps your body produce more antibodies. Now, in traditional Chinese medicine, Astragalus is sweet and slightly warm. And the way you can take this is pretty similar to Lingzhi. You can take a few slices of the dried root, simmer it in water for 20 to 30 minutes, and drink it as a daily tea. Now, in the countryside in Asia, farmers will actually put Astragalus root just into soups and stews, so the whole family builds immunity without even thinking about it. It's like this kind of quiet guardian of the immune system. These 3 drinks, green tea, medicinal mushrooms, and Astragalus root, they all work in different ways, but they share a single unifying truth. They strengthen the terrain and defenses of your body. See, cancer and chronic disease don't just strike randomly. They thrive when the terrain is weak, when your immune system is exhausted, when your qi is low, inflammation runs unchecked. Now, these ancient drinks are nature's way of saying, keep your defenses strong, and disease cannot take root. And you can think about it this way. Every time you reach for a drink, you're either feeding disease or you're feeding life. The choice is yours. And again, let's be honest, guys, if you're feeling burned out, exhausted, maybe even anxious, and you're unable to sleep, you aren't alone. It's the story of our modern world and unfortunately the story of my life. And yet most of the time when you go to the doctor, your labs will come back normal and you're told you're fine, but you don't feel fine. Well, traditional Chinese medicine has an answer for this. An entire framework that explains why your body feels drained, why your mind won't shut off at night, and why your energy never seems to refill. And the good news is, there's actually a way out. That's why I'm hosting this one-time free live online event called The Lost Chinese Practices, quietly helping people conquer chronic fatigue and burnout. I'll walk you through exactly how this ancient method works, how people like you are finally regaining their energy, their calm, and their ability to actually rest. So make sure you grab your spot down there below. There's a link. It's completely free. And I haven't shared this publicly, but in my own story, several years ago, I got incredibly ill. It initially started off with burnout symptoms, a high resting heart rate, I was feeling chronically exhausted, and then I couldn't sleep. And then as time went on, I was still having so many heart palpitations that I couldn't sleep for months. And in fact, this arrhythmia that I had from burnout took about 5 years to go away. Now, unfortunately, at the tail end of this burnout, I developed chronic fatigue syndrome, I had thyroid issues. I was so exhausted that in the middle of my workday, I had to not schedule patients and go home to sleep and then come back at night to see patients to pay my rent. And what I learned was that these cluster of symptoms, brain fog, dizziness, wired but tired, feeling on edge all the time, and ultimately exhausted, were symptoms of burnout. And it wasn't a random assortment of symptoms, but it was all one thing. And the things that I'm going to share in this upcoming live event are things that would have spared me 5 years of the darkest years of my life, where I was so chronically ill that I was honestly scared what might happen next. And I didn't have the experience to recognize them as burnout. And I think a lot of my patients, when they come in with these symptoms, they also don't know that they have a moderate or severe case of burnout. And if we treat it like burnout, not a random anxiety, not random insomnia, but the pattern, that's where it leads to a full recovery. So make sure you come join me for this live workshop. We'll go into my story, practices, herbs, vitamins, minerals, traditional Chinese medicine, everything East versus West you need to know to heal and recover. Now, if you found this video interesting on the herbs that have been clinically shown to have an anti-cancer effect and they match the traditional wisdom, make sure you check out this video right here. This is what I think is the top 8 herbs that fight cancer cells.